Let me once again reiterate my warm Pacific welcome to all our colleagues in the side event this morning, particularly to our panelists who are sitting here looking beautiful, graceful, and ready to respond to do a Talanoa. This is a Talanoa session. I really want them just to relate and narrate the stories that they feel that is important in terms of oceans. Just before we do that, let me just remind ourselves that time is of essence here. We have to be out of here by 11:10. So we have to be very strict in timing. As I said earlier, there are some other activities that some of us will have to attend to. But let me just do a scene setting, brief scene setting. Okay, since 2017, ocean was never in this UNFCCC process. It was never in this process. We thank Samoa for hosting the PIF Leaders Meeting in 2017. That sort of initiated this work. So I'm just trying to share the background with you. Some of you were part of this process, part of this journey. As we journey from Apia to Baku to this day, we still haven't seen ocean properly landed in the UNFCCC space or in that climate space. There is a dialogue that's been initiated in response to other global processes, our oceans, that has also been happening parallel in the world today. But the key message for us is that we need to work together coherently to enable our ocean issues to be elevated and land in this climate space. It has to land on both feet. It cannot just be one foot. It has to be both issues. There are some RSO activities being undertaken through the subsidiary bodies. In my view, that's not enough. It's not sufficient for the largest ocean in the world, the Pacific Ocean. So for us, some key messages that we need to take forward. Our blue Pacific continent is more than a geographical region. It is our home, our heritage, and our future. Second, the 2050 strategy for the Blue Pacific continent underscores the need for integrated and sustainable management of our oceans, of our ocean resources. And third, to achieve sustainable development, we must base our policies, management, and investment decisions on comprehensive data that reflects the value of our marine resources and our culture, values, traditional knowledge, and commitment to stewardship and protection. As I said earlier, at this stage, at this juncture, we all know that there's a report of the June 2024 dialogue that's been shared, that's been published, that is providing some guidance in the manner in which we parties, large ocean state parties, that will engage in this process. So without further ado, and with the time of essence for us, let me introduce our panel this morning. We have Honorable Mona Ainuu from Niue, Minister for the Ministry of Natural Resources. We welcome you, Honorable Minister. Please give a round of applause. Then we have my good friend, my brother from Arai State, Honorable Gustav Aitaro, who is the Minister for State and Foreign Affairs for the Republic of Palau. Then we also have Dr. Tapungao Falefo, the permanent representative of Tuvalu to the UN. Welcome, Tep. We call him Tep at school, so I stick to that. Then we have Mr. Stephanie Nawandra, need no introduction, sitting right here to my right. And Ms. Coral Pasisi, need no introduction as well. So I would like to open the discussions right now. And by posing some questions, which you don't have to respond in technical details. I would encourage to Talanoa. Give some Talanoa, give your views. Because your honest, genuine views are from your heart, not from the mind, not from what you read in the media, social media. Okay? So we'll start with Honorable Mr. Ainu. Your question. As PC's political climate champion for gender and social inclusion, can you please describe why it is important to mainstream issues such as gender and climate change across relevant international processes. And the second question, how would you like to see gender and climate change mainstream in the UN Oceans Conference in Nice in 2025? You have the floor, ma'am.
Thank you, moderator. I forgot the first question. No, I'm kidding. Mainstreaming gender in ocean. You know, we live in the ocean. We can't separate ocean from the environment. We can't separate from our lives. Someone said once, and she's sitting right here, and she said, the ocean is in our DNA. It's in our veins. We were born in the ocean. So having women get involved in trying to, like myself, you know, tradition and culture for me in Niue, women don't really, back in the day, were not allowed to go to the sea. But as time had moved forward, we were allowed that opportunity to also frequent the sea. So in regards to trying to include this in the conversation at the international space, it's very, very important. It's critical, actually, because we do so much. And when I talk about tradition and culture, I think a lot of the islanders here would understand what I mean. But having a conversation that is not understood sometimes by the international community that allows women to participate in some of these activities in the ocean, I think that's the hardest part. I live on one island. We are surrounded by the sea. So it's important for, my daughter, who's 13, her cousins, her families, to also understand that it's important to respect the ocean, to make sure that there is an opportunity for them as well. We take them down to the sea and we teach them what it's like to enjoy what is available now. Because what I have seen in the last few years is that we are really challenged by the warming of the sea, the reduction of food security from the sea because of that warming waters. And it's really important for us to teach them that there are better ways to live. And so when we talk about mainstreaming, we need to include women in this conversation. I know some countries that we have been to, it's taboo to talk, to have women included in these activities. But for us, it's important because we really don't have any choice. We've gotten to the point where we have to all collaborate. We have to teach our families, our women and our girls, to make sure they understand what it is that they need to get involved with. I know in Niue, we're leading in the ocean space. I know my beautiful Coral Pasisi here, she now works at SBC, but one of the things I'm very proud of is that having women establish some driven goals, like the ocean conservation commitment that we have in Niue. This was driven by Ms. Pasisi here, and she works with SBC, but I'm going to let her also cover the OCCs because it's important. In the Pacific, when you're one and the same. So SBC work for us, we work for SBC, so I'll let Coral elaborate on the OCCs because this is one very important activity that we have, and I'm very proud that we have allowed ourselves to be leading in this space in the ocean. When the moderator talked about 2017, when it started in 2017, Niue announced in 2017 40% of its EEZ as conservation area. That's a huge commitment for a very small jurisdiction. But we're very proud because we're taking the lead, coming up with world-winning solutions. The OCCs that won one of the international awards in the Conservation International Nature category, that's an achievement in itself. So the women are leading to drive these activities. So I'm very proud to say that all of the Pacific Islands are trying so hard. But one thing that I really want to highlight is when we have these activities, when we have this innovative ideas, we need funds. We need funds to drive these. We need funds to capitalize what we have, because we're trying our best, and we've been called to commit. We've been called to take action. Take action for us because we don't have any choice. We don't have any choice to decide otherwise. You know, large countries have choice. I have one island. I don't have a choice but to try and maintain what I have, to make sure that the environment that I grew up is enjoyed by my daughter who's 13. Who knows? So these are some of the things we want to call on the international community for accessibility. Simplify the processes to access these funds, because, you know, it's amazing to hear $1 billion, $100 billion. If we can't access these funds, it doesn't mean anything to us. We need the international community to, you know, have a look, re-look and review the processes and reduce the review time, reduce some of the very complicated procedures and processes that has been, I guess, categorized under how the accessibility component. So these are a lot of challenges that we have. And I also want to say that even though we live in the ocean, we live in the Pacific Ocean, we also know that a lot of the ocean or the marine supplies come from the ocean. For instance, the tuna. The tuna fish, you know, 50% or over 50% of the tuna fish comes from the Pacific Island. That's a lot. So if anybody who receives these tuna are willing to come and help us to make sure that we maintain this stock. Because the way things are going, the water is warming up, the numbers have reduced. If we don't reduce now. But then we also have challenges. Apart from climate change, from climate impact, we also have issues with illegal fishing. So all these things are tied in. And so these are our challenges. But that is reality for us. Reality is our resources, we can't continue to monitor and have the surveillance continue because we really don't have, I guess, the resources. And for us as a small administration, although the Pacific is a lot of islands, and we try very, very hard to help each other, I still have one island. And basically having people and having the international community support us is really important. We shouldn't be delaying. We're seeing all the evidence in the Pacific. You know, we have spaces where, like this little space, 60,000 people living in a small space. That's, you know, families, animals. This is because they're they don't have the space anymore. Some of these islands have submerged. So it's really important that we do something now. Action needs to take place now. We can't continue to come to COP 29. That's a lot of COPs to be still talking. What are we talking about? If you're not going to give the funds, say so. But don't let us continue to come to COP, because we're trying our best, coming up with these OCCs, coming up with innovative ideas. Everybody's on the board, but we're not getting the funds that we need to move this forward. So, moderator, I think I've taken up most of the time, but thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. Can we give a hand to Honorable Minister Ainul? Our second panelist is Honorable Aitaro. Palau has been a champion of oceans policy ever since donkey's years when they introduced the sanctuary, the shark sanctuary many years ago. And I know he was part of that because he was director of foreign affairs at that time. Can you share your experience in terms of your conservation aspirations, given the challenges that you do face as a small island developing state, and what do you see in terms of the future of Palau in engaging these oceans? I know you hosted the Oceans Conference a few years ago, and we continue to look upon that. And we would like to hear your views on the Talanoa style. What is Palau's aspiration as we move forward from here?
Thank you, moderator. No, thank you very much. You know, first, let's also like to thank the government of Samoa for hosting it 2017. It actually was the spark that led to our, initiative, not only for Palau but every country in the Pacific. You know, my distinguished colleague, Coral Pasisi, mentioned that it's within our DNA. But our international partners, they don't realize that the oceans is our very essence. In our Republic of Palau, the ocean is connected to the people. When women start to give birth, the ladies will look at the tide, determine when the baby will be delivered. I guess when I was about giving birth, there was a typhoon. A lot of people, my mom was suffering, so she kept reminding me about that. But that's how connected we are to the oceans. And to Palauans, we knew the challenge of hosting the Oceans Conference. But one of our goals was to bring them here to the shores within the Pacific, within our neighborhood, to let them see the impacts that we are suffering from. And Palau decided to go for the Oceans Office, Pacific Ocean Office, not just to bring it to Palau and the region, but we want to highlight its importance in the international community and the partners that we need to be involved. Last month, we had our 30th independence anniversary. I made a point to invite all our ambassadors, friends from 30 countries, from Japan and Manila. They showed up. Little did they know that I invited them to a reception for the grand opening of our Oceans Office, to give the opportunity for them to sit down and listen to the commissioner tell the challenges that we go through. It's really disheartening when you say the Pacific is the largest ocean continent. If our partners, international partners, don't act now, it'll be just a largest ocean, that's it. We'll be gone. Palau was the first country in Suva to sign with Tuvalu to recognize their borders. In the event it erodes, my position as the foreign minister gives me the opportunity to not only delve into climate change directly, but also the impact it has in every sector in our community. So it's a personal feeling for me to come here and say, to the international community, as my distinguished colleague has mentioned, if you can do, if not, let us know. The carrot and the horse is not working for us. We met with the lady who's in charge of the GCF funding in Cook Islands for the forum, and I recommended to her, even in the UN. It's so complicated. We don't have the resources. We don't have the manpower to do this. Why don't you regionalize your program? It's not a one-size-fits-all for everybody. Like the Tuna Commission, the Western Pacific, the Atlantic, because they know the Atlantic has specific, needs, specific wants. Regionalize it so us in the Pacific all have the same common, interest, common priorities. So it will simplifies the process and has urgent and immediate response. That's another reason why we always wanted the Pacific Oceans Commission office in Palau, is to also use it to highlight on behalf of every, members of the Pacific Islands, small island states. You go to the UN, they say the SIDS, AOSIS, where are they from? The ocean. The most vulnerable states, where are they from? The ocean. So let's not talk about it. I would just got out of the hack side event. Even Canada was the first country to step up as a G20 to provide some funding. That's a promising, but Canada is only one of many. I would like to close with a statement that, like a distinguished colleague Menoni was there, and SEFA, at the Pacific Island Forum Leaders meeting in Tonga. The Secretary General Guterres was giving a statement, and there was one sentence that really stands out to me. He said, if we save the Pacific, we save the world. I hope that message goes to every partner that we have, not only in this room, but outside of this room as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honorable Aitaro, for the excellent talanoa. Indeed, we are from the large ocean states. Save the Pacific, we save the world. Thank you very much. Our next speaker is Ambassador Falefo. Quick question, Tep. Can you please discuss for us the IT laws, I guess this is the law of the sea. Advisory opinion is what does it mean for ocean? Tuvalu has championed sea level rise at the UN, such as the recent climate summit and UNGA. Can you please discuss Tuvalu's experience in this process? Talanoa, Tep. Talanoa.
Thank you very much, Ambassador Moderator. I am absolutely delighted to be part of this esteemed panel. And thank you, Pacific Ocean Commissioner, for the opportunity to be part of this Talanoa session on a topic that is very dear to our heart, coming from a very small island country. Just before I unpack the question, especially on the aid loss, advisory opinion and the involvement of Tuvalu and the sea level rise that Tuvalu seems to be one of the co-leads during the UNGA process this year. I want to connect that to the theme of our session, with this transformative integrated ocean governance and the UNFCCC. Moderator, you made mention of the fact that the ocean became a topic in 2017. But at the UNFCCC forum, it started in 2015 during the 21st COP in Paris, where the Paris Agreement came into being. If we look into the UN process, it took about 21 years for the ocean to surface as a topic. Since the first one in Berlin in 1997, the first COP. It took so long for the ocean to become an issue in the Pacific, in the UNFCCC processes. Now, let me focus on the aid loss advisory opinion. The aid loss advisory opinion came about as a result of the COSIS request to the aid loss. The COSIS is the Commission of Small Island State for Climate Change and International Law, a creation of Tuvalu and Antigua. We created the COSIS in order for the COSIS to make this submission to the IDLOS. As part of the IDLOS legal procedures, member state of the IDLOS cannot submit directly to the IDLOS a request for an advisory opinion, but it can do so in terms of other claims, but not an advisory opinion. I get this clarification because I just came out of the a tour to Hamburg last week, and I asked this question to the president of the IDLOS, who gave explanation of the IDLOS advisory opinion. That's what he said. Member state cannot ask for an advisory opinion directly unless it comes from a legal entity. So that's why Tuvalu, out of fear that the ocean is becoming, especially the impact of sea level rise, is becoming an extensive threat to Tuvalu, we decided to explore all sorts of legal avenue in order for us to take this issue up. You might recall that the first attempt for a legal opinion to any of the international judicial body was carried out, I think, by Palau back in 2002. But the first country to voice the concern about climate change and the need to take this up to a judicial body was Tuvalu in 1997 at the Kyoto, the third COP in Kyoto, Japan. I just want to put some context into this discussion because I really want to know to make sure that our audience know how difficult it was to process this issue through the UN process. So it was taken up by the COSIS to the IDLOS. It was adjudicated by the IDLOS. About 33 member states participated in the oral presentation. About 9 entities, organizations also presented. It was an unprecedented process because never before an advisory opinion was sought to any of our international tribunal, especially on the issue of climate change. So the advisory opinion, although it is not legally binding, it is a precedent that is now being set for member states to take note of. What is critically important from the advisory opinion is the fact that the opinion was sought under Part 12 of the UNCLOS Section 3, especially on Article 192 and 194. 192 is especially to seek the obligations of members on the prevention and preservation of the maritime environment. And 94 is about the obligation about prevention and control of pollution. So these are the legal issues that the causes brought to the IDLOS, with the view that what is most important, I guess, from the opinion is the fact that the IDLOS, in trying to interpret the submission, it came down to the issue of whether that will become an obligation of states, which I believe that most of us have read the opinion. It was an opinion that is now setting a precedent for other upcoming advisory opinion, especially the one from the ICJ. That yes, first, that the climate change is causing pollution to the environment, or causing damage to the ocean, the marine environment, the ocean. So this is something that is very important, because all along we have been discussing and members have been saying that they don't have a legal obligation. Now the IDLOS advisory opinion is saying that yes, you have an obligation, not only to take note of, but to also prevent. The involvement of Tuvalu basically was through the causes in trying to make sure that this issue is taken up for a legal opinion. On the question about sea level rise, of course, is part of our effort in trying to address the impact of climate change to the ocean, including sea level rise. Coming from a country that is very low in terms of land elevation, merely 2 meters above sea level. For other members of the region, you have higher land to move into. For Tuvalu, to us, sea level rise is purely an existential threat. So, because of that, you might have noticed that Tuvalu have not only thought about things outside the box, but have been doing things outside the box, one of which is the creation of causes. Two is the pushing this issue through the UN. Last year, we processed the issue through the complex processes of the UN for a specific dedicated high-level meeting of leaders this year on sea level rise. There are so many competing issues, but we were able to push that. And Tuvalu was one of the co-leads of the what we call the Coalition on Addressing Sea Level Rise and its Extensive Threat. In short, the CSET that was created and now co-chaired by Tuvalu and Germany, purposely to push this issue of sea level rise through the UN process. And I'm glad to say that at the end of the high-level meeting in September this year, leaders agreed that the Secretary General of the UN has to prepare a summary report. And for that summary report to set as a platform for the member states to start negotiation for a more dedicated outcome to be tabled to the UNGA in 2026. So I guess those are the two processes that Tuvalu have involved in, and I'm more than happy to address any related question, Ambassador Moderator. Thank you.
Thank you. Give a big hands to Ambassador Falfo. Our next panelist is Mr. Safnaya Nawandra, who is the One Crop coordinator. And the question to him is, SPREP is responsible for leading the coordination of the One Crop support to PSEEDs on international environmental processes, including UNFCCC and so on. Can you kindly tell us about how these processes link together and how regional coordination links together and cooperation supports integration of the various international processes, in particular for the oceans? Mr. Nawandra, you have the floor.
Okay, thank you, moderator, and thank you, the previous speakers, for setting the scene for some of the comments that I'll make. First is the importance of two issues for the Pacific.
One is oceans, as we've been discussing. That's always been high on the agenda of the Pacific, especially in influencing global processes right from the beginning, with UNCLOS, which set the scene for a lot of the things on oceans. The other is climate change. And TEP highlighted that with countries like Marshall Islands, Tuvalu, Kiribati, who have vulnerabilities that are existential to them. Under the current UNCLOS laws, our areas of jurisdiction are being affected if we have sea level rise. And that's why our countries have taken that to the UNGA to try and get that resolved, that we maintain jurisdiction over the large ocean areas that we have now. It's important for us because that's where we get most of our life. We don't have much land. Most of our living and the things that we need to live come from the ocean. It's a common part of our heritage. It's linked to everyday life for a lot of our communities who still live in a subsistence setting. Leaving aside the economics, which are also important, especially for things like tuna. We've maintained the best managed tuna fishery. But to what effect if that tuna is migrating somewhere else because of changes to ocean temperature, ocean acidification, and other aspects? The second thing I want to touch on is the integrated nature of a lot of these conventions and global discussions. Nothing exists in sectors or silos. Only people do that. Nature and everything else has no boundaries. They interact with each other, and what happens in one place affects what happens in another. And that's how we need to treat these negotiations and discussions that we are having. At the last UN Environment Assembly, there was a decision or resolution to request the different secretariats to start integrating the different processes. And this is something we see coming up in negotiations all the time by those who want to obstruct movement. They will say that process belongs somewhere else. That process belongs somewhere else. When it really belongs where it needs to be discussed in all of those for our negotiations processes. Anyone who knows a bit of science about climate knows the ocean is central to climate. It's what moderates climate. It's what probably the biggest sink of heat that's generated. So saying that it doesn't belong within the climate change negotiations is basically nonsensical from any perspective. And one of the jobs that we need to do as regional organizations is to continue to support our countries by giving them this integrated advice that they need to be effective at the negotiations. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Nawandra. Indeed, the message is very clear. Integration of processes and procedures at the global level, at all levels, regional and national levels, will provide us the necessary platforms, in order to launch our various activities, particularly on oceans. Our last panelist is Ms. Coral Pasisi, somebody whom you all know. A question in relation to the role of SPC being the science provider, the largest technical organization in our region. Coral, SPC delivers a range of climate change capabilities to the region and hosts the Center for Ocean Science. What role does science and knowledge play in supporting integrated ocean governance? Second, can you please discuss the progress of the ocean dialogue and the current state of play? Maybe we can skip the second question. Just focus on the first one. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ambassador and Ministers, Ambassadors, Ocean Commissioner and the Director General of SPREP. This is a very intimidating panel to be a part of. I'm just Coral from Niue. I'm a scientist, but I was born and raised in the ocean, and for me that empowers me to be confident about speaking to the importance of the value of the ocean. I mean, we come from the blue Pacific continent. That is the biggest blue food bowl in the world. It is also the biggest healthy lung on the planet. It is the buffer that keeps us from all frying as well. As our esteemed colleagues have already spoken to, every second breath we take comes from the healthy oceans that we have been custodians on over for thousands of years. And it is that custodianship, the Pacific people who were like the first astronauts of the blue Pacific space, that big blue expanse that sailed out and observed the changes in those environments, and over that time empowered themselves with the traditional knowledge and practice to really look after that environment well. And so our first knowledge base comes from that traditional knowledge and experience. It is not anecdotal, it's actually proven through many thousands of years of experience. It wasn't written. We don't have scrolls like other societies. We have mouth to ear. We teach our children the value of that, and that is passed down and shared through generations. We just don't have a system of verification like formal schools and universities do, but it doesn't take away the value of that knowledge, both to inform good decisions, to understand how the environment is changing, but also as a cloak of resilience. If we don't teach our children how to fish, which species to take and which to leave behind, then they won't be empowered to be resilient in these incredible environments that we live in. And then, of course, climate change is bringing a change to that environment that we all understood and have been custodians of at a rate that exceeds our traditional knowledge of the seasons that are aligned with different things. And this is where the importance of science comes in to complement that traditional knowledge. But it's extremely expensive, and no one wants to pay for it. And climate finance is incredibly hard to get to pay for that necessary information. So we've leaned into the existing architecture of the region to help pool our scientific capability in SBC, and SPREP, and FFA, and other important regional institutions. And that science is really important. And as Director General of SPREP said, we now know that under high emission scenarios, the tuna stocks with so many of our countries depend on for economic revenue and food are moving east and into the high seas. Ironically, into an area where polluting nations can pick them out for free. So our countries can lose up to 20% of their GDP revenues under those high emission scenarios. If we stay below 1.5, we limit that significantly to potentially 3% loss of GDP for a majority of our Pacific countries. So there is a very clear argument on the science through the economic analysis then of our sister agencies, FFA, to show that if we stop climate change or if we reduce that, we will reduce the loss and damage associated with the dependent resource for so many of our countries. That's critically important. I also want to mention one other area of science which is critically important, and our ambassador of Tuvalu has led on this work and explained this already. But to understand what existentiality looks like for a small island state with sea level rise and increased wave inundation, it's very hard, it's an emotive topic, and we can talk about science, etc., but visualizing and feeling what that actually looks like is where we really truly move the dial on policy. And I think this is where our investment in science and 20 years of measuring wave inundation, sea level rise, LIDAR data, elevation data, we are now able to take that information put it into a 3D model that you can touch and feel and see what does it look like when we get to 30 centimeters in sea level rise. What does that do to the 10-year king tides? It actually makes it a 1 in 100 year disaster. And if we get to the point by 2050 where those occur every year, how could our countries possibly survive that kind of impact? But people need to see that, touch it, feel it, and hear from the youth and the people of these countries and communities what that actually means. It's not just a term, it's a reality. And then we come back again to the critical challenges that we're facing in this climate negotiation in getting oceans really, truly appreciated and funded. I think everyone else has made the argument around why it should be in the UNFCCC very clearly and more clearly and strongly. But I want to talk to the finance components, right? Because getting funding for ocean science is impossible through the global climate finance mechanisms. It simply isn't attractive to them because these are 20-year investments in gathering data and doing modeling, etc. But they need to also fund the documentation of traditional knowledge and practice because that is also being lost and eroded. And that is a key part of the information that we need as well. So I think this brings me to my final points that Minister Ainu mentioned. To be honest, in Niue, we're sick of trying to augment these international big funds that don't take into account the unique challenges of small island states. So we've developed our own, something that we can actually harness those resources and then deliver them at a rate that is commensurate with the absorptive capacity. And this leverages off an understanding and appreciation that the ocean's value, its true value, is not just carbon, it's not just fish, it's not just turtles or these things that everyone else likes to splice off and cut up into different pieces. It's all of those things. And until we truly appreciate the value of that asset in its total and commensurately provide the resources to our countries to maintain the value of that asset, not just for our people, but for the rest of the world, then we are not supporting the countries of the blue planet, of the blue continent, that actually come to the table with the biggest potential contribution to global planetary stability. We should not be begging for funds. We come to the table with this massive natural capital that our countries are protecting and responsibly using. The least that the polluting countries can do is provide the resources to buffer the impacts that we have and to continue to protect this incredible blue planet and this incredible blue continent that we all share.
Thank you, Coral, for that excellent talanoa. As always, you've been a very, very excellent speaker. So, Excellencies, Honorable Ministers and Ambassadors and colleagues, that brings us to the end of the panel discussion. As you know, we are running out of time. But I'll give only one question to any audience who would like to ask one question to the panelists. Just one question, and then I'll close. Anyone? Anyone? There's a lady here. Can...
Bulavinaka. My name is Sarah. I'm from Islands Business Magazine. My question is around the component of oceans for the UNFCCC. How are we as the Pacific pushing for that to be recognized in this COP or the future COPs? What are some of the steps we're taking?
Any takers from the panel members? Okay, Coral.
I think you're
Mr. Taro, you got the mic. All right, but that's a very, I think I set myself up in this trap. We can have an interview later for your purpose. But as you've heard that this has been a challenging journey for us in terms of landing our ocean into the climate change space. There's lots of work that is needed, lots of collaboration. And one aspect that is really needed for us is leadership. And I'm glad we have the Honorable Ministers here. Leadership is key to this journey. For us, our principal leaders to be able, to take us through, to walk over into the climate process. I cannot go into the details. As I said, we can be able to discuss that later, but it's the aspirations of large ocean states that we have ocean properly landed as an agenda item of the COP. Full stop. Okay, Your Excellencies, and sorry. Mr. Rwanda.
Maybe just to add on to that, Fiji, when it had the presidency of COP, attempted to do exactly that. They managed to get it in as a Talanoa, landed unofficially. It's continued as that over time. The other reason is because we know less about the ocean than we know about every other thing. And that's why people are, I guess, a bit reluctant to discuss oceans in a more formal sense, in a way that is more concrete in the obligations on states. But we've learned a lot about oceans recently. I had a conversation with the CEO of the Global Environment Facility, and he was really pushing to up the weighting of oceans in the CBD and in JEF resourcing, because SDG 14 is the least resourced. And the reason historically is because our knowledge of terrestrial things are much more, and that's why it was weighted much more under the CBD, and that's why there's more resourcing available for terrestrial things under STAR and under other allocations. So we need to change that around, because we know a lot more about the ocean now, and then we can also bring in the precautionary approach where things we don't know, we still need to address. And maybe the opportunity comes up if we do get the joint presidency with Australia for COP31. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Nawandra. Just a quick summary before we finish off. We've heard some very excellent messages coming out from the panels. We heard from the Honorable Minister Ainu on the importance of effective participation regarding women in the decision-making process. She said evidence is staring at us that our island states are suffering from the wrath from the scourge of climate change. She even emphasized a few points on the constraints that we do face, which are governance gaps, capability gaps, capacity gaps, funding gaps. So these are critical areas that's been identified. Mr. Aitaro, of course, no one size fits all. And I'm really happy with that statement. We really need to be looked after at our regional, sub-regional level. One size fits all does not help us. And indeed, we are connected to the people. We are very much connected to the people. And thank you for sharing your traditional practices. My good friend, thank you for sharing the experience on heat loss. It shows how difficult it is for us, to engage in this process. But since we are member states, we should not refrain or be fearful of the process. We have to be in there in order to make the change. We cannot be backing from outside. We have to be there. Mr. Tapungao has already mentioned how Tuvalu did that in the past few years. Mr. Nawandra, thank you for emphasizing the importance of integration of processes and procedures. Ocean is embedded into our DNA, as our minister said. It is part and parcel of our lives, of our daily lives. The question is, how can we take it forward for the future sustainable livelihoods of our communities and our people, particularly the indigenous people of the oceans, those who depend on the oceans. That is very, very critical for us. Coral, your presentation on science is always good, because we need science for evidence-based decision-making. And there's so much that science is telling us. The scourge of climate change is adversely affecting our communities, our resources, and our people. There was a question on ocean accounting. There are posts, but I had to withdraw it because this is ocean accounting is like your bank account. You go to the bank, in a simple illustration, you go to the bank, you see how much money you have there and how much do you withdraw. Ocean accounting is the same. You work on your assets and how much you can keep for the future by not withdrawing on that. So with that simple analogy, you can be able to understand what ocean accounting is. So with that, let me thank Dr. Philemon. Philly, thank you so much for organizing this event, and I'm sure that we've learned a lot from you here. The importance of engaging, even though everyone is busy, but thank you for this platform, and I think it will generate more discussions as we go forward from here. With those few words, let me close, and also let us thank our panelists. Another round. And we can have a family photo up here with the panelists. That will really appreciate. Me to you, to me, thank you very much for having me as your moderator.